There is a kind of prison no one else can see. It has no bars, no walls, no locks, but it holds you tighter than any cell ever could. It is the prison of memory, of guilt, of regret. You are the prisoner, the guard, and the judge, and you live each day inside a loop of what could have been, what should have been, what you should have done differently. That's where most people get stuck, not in the event itself, but in the story they keep telling themselves about the event. You don't have to be broken to feel stuck. Sometimes all it takes is a whisper in your mind that sounds like your voice, but is really your fear, your shame, your past wearing your tone. It says things like, you don't deserve peace yet, not after what you did, not after what you let happen, not after who you used to be. And because it sounds familiar, you believe it. You call it honesty, you call it being real with yourself, but it's not truth, it's punishment dressed as self-awareness. We all have a version of ourselves that we carry in the shadows. The one who made the wrong decision, who trusted the wrong person, who didn't speak up when it mattered. And we keep that version close, not because it defines us, but because we think holding on to it protects us. If we remember the pain, we won't repeat it. If we punish ourselves enough, maybe we'll pay the price. But pain does not become wisdom by being repeated. It becomes weight. And eventually, that weight becomes your identity. The truth is, we don't stay stuck because of the past. We stay stuck because of the story we attach to the past. You are not defined by your worst moment. You are shaped by what you do after it. But that story won't change until you decide to change the narrator. The one who speaks with fear must be replaced by the one who speaks with truth. The one who says you ruined everything must be silenced by the one who says you still have time. The one who calls you a failure must lose to the one who remembers you are learning. Forgiveness is not forgetting, it is remembering without the sting. It is saying, yes, that happened, but it will not decide who I am becoming. It is not weakness, it is strength in its purest form, because it takes far more courage to let go of guilt than to keep carrying it. Guilt is easy, it feels noble, it feels responsible, but it never gives back, it only drains. And the longer you live inside it, the further you drift from the future that still wants you. You don't move on by accident, you move on by decision. You choose not to erase the past, but to stop living inside it. You choose to stop replaying that moment over and over and start writing a new one. It's not about ignoring what happened, it's about refusing to let it be the final word. Your story does not end at the worst thing you've done. It begins at the moment you stop letting that moment own you. So if you are tired, if you are ashamed, if you feel like you've ruined too much to rebuild, listen to me. You haven't. The only thing stopping you is a voice that doesn't belong to your future, it belongs to your fear. And fear does not get to decide what happens next. You do. This is where the real work begins. Not in fixing what's behind you, but in reclaiming what's still ahead. Not in erasing the pain, but in transforming it. Because the pain may be real, but so is the possibility. And right now, that possibility is waiting for one thing, you. Guilt convinces you that you're still connected to what you lost. That if you feel bad long enough, maybe it proves you cared, maybe it means you've changed. But guilt is not transformation. It's repetition. It ties you to the moment you regret the most and tells you to keep looking at it until you feel clean. But you never do. You just get used to the weight. There is something almost addictive about guilt because it offers you a role, the sufferer, the repentant, the one who still pays for the damage. And when you don't know who you are without your mistakes, even pain becomes identity. You learn to call it humility when it's actually avoidance. Because as long as you feel bad, you don't have to move forward. You don't have to try again. You don't have to risk failing in a new way. Guilt protects you from responsibility by locking you inside remorse. It keeps you from forgiveness by convincing you that you haven't earned it yet. But healing doesn't come through earning. It comes through receiving. Through choosing to accept that your value is not tied to your performance, your past, or your pain. And that choice terrifies the version of you that still believes suffering is sacred. Many people never move on because they confuse guilt with integrity. They believe that to let go means they don't care. That to release themselves is to dismiss what happened. But accountability and shame are not the same thing. One leads to growth, the other leads to self-destruction. Real responsibility is not staying buried, it is rising, wiser. It is taking what you've learned and using it to build something new, not as punishment, but as purpose. You don't become better by staying broken. You become better by choosing a different response to the same pain. Guilt says, remember what you did. Growth says, remember what you learned. Guilt says you should have known better. Grace says, now you do. And that's enough. The problem is we often wait for someone else to release us, for the apology we never received, for the permission to move on. But that power never belonged to them. It has always been yours. The longer you wait to feel worthy of freedom, the more it slips from your hands. Because freedom is not something you earn, it's something you claim. And guilt will never hand it to you. You have to walk past guilt without its blessing. You have to move forward without needing to prove you've suffered enough. You have to say, I did the best I could with what I had. And even if that wasn't enough back then, I am still enough to begin again now. This is where most people hesitate. They've held on to guilt for so long it feels like a part of them. Letting it go feels like losing a limb. But what you're actually losing is the chain around your ankle. The chain that's kept you close to your lowest moment, the chain that whispers, don't forget who you used to be. But you don't have to forget, you just don't have to live from it anymore. The past is a teacher, not a master. It has lessons, not laws. What you did before was real, but it is not final. You are allowed to change your mind, to rewrite your path, to become someone you wouldn't have recognized back then. That is not betrayal of who you were. That is proof that you have grown. You don't move on because everything is fixed. You move on because you refuse to stay where everything broke. And when you release guilt, you don't lose your story. You gain the power to tell it differently. Not everything you carry is yours to keep. Some of it was handed to you by fear, some by shame, and some by voices you trusted before you learned they were wrong. Over time, you confuse what is yours with what you inherited. You mistake survival patterns for personality. You build a life around wounds you never meant to protect. And the longer you carry what doesn't serve you, the more it shapes the version of you that feels permanent. There are things you've held on to so long you no longer question them. You assume this weight is just part of being you. You call it realism when it's fear. You call it preparation when it's avoidance. You say you're just being careful, but what you really mean is you're still afraid of getting hurt again. And that fear runs everything. It dictates who you trust, what you try, how close you let people get. It sounds reasonable, but it costs you the life that only begins after the fear ends. Pain changes how you walk, not just physically, but emotionally. It shortens your steps. It makes you flinch at beauty. It causes you to second guess every good thing that comes near. Not because you don't want it, but because a part of you is still waiting for it to disappear. So you protect yourself, not just from what hurt you, but from what could heal you. You pull away from the risk of being disappointed and call it wisdom. But protection without awareness becomes a cage. You stop living and call it discipline. Letting go is not forgetting. It's choosing to stop rehearsing what harmed you. It's refusing to let yesterday's lessons write today's story. And it starts by asking a difficult question. Is this belief helping me become who I'm meant to be? Or is it keeping me where I was last broken? If the answer is silence, you already know. If the answer is tension, you're holding something that's not yours anymore. What once kept you safe may now be holding you back. You don't have to hate what happened to release it. You just have to decide it no longer has the authority to define you. The anger, the blame, the endless replay of what they did or what you didn't do, all of it can end when you decide to stop participating in it. Healing is not the same as justice. Sometimes closure comes not when they apologize, but when you stop waiting for them to. And sometimes peace is not something you feel. It's something you choose to protect, even when your thoughts try to take it away. You can grieve what happened and still grow from it. You can love who you were and still become someone new. This is not contradiction. This is evolution. You don't have to make peace with the pain. You have to make peace with the fact that you survived it, that in the middle of all that confusion, you still kept going. And if that strength was possible then, imagine what is possible now. The longer you carry something, the more it feels like a part of you. But letting go doesn't mean losing yourself. It means meeting the part of you that was buried underneath the burden. The part that still dreams, the part that still believes, the part that still wants more than survival. That version of you is not gone, it's waiting. And every time you release what no longer serves you, you move one step closer to meeting them again. There comes a point when the past stops feeling like something that happened and starts feeling like something you are. You stop seeing your mistakes as choices and begin seeing them as proof. Proof that you're broken. Proof that you're incapable. Proof that you're not meant to become anything more. The wound becomes a label and the label becomes a lens. You see your reflection not for who you are, but for what hurt you. You filter your future through the shadow of what went wrong. This is how pain becomes personality. You begin to organize your thoughts around what happened. You shape your relationships around what you fear will happen again. You make decisions from a place of defense, not desire, and the world starts responding not to your potential, but to your protection. What you don't heal, you start to repeat. And the worst part is, it doesn't feel like a pattern, it feels like reality. The mind has a way of reinforcing what it believes. If you carry shame, you'll interpret silence as judgment. If you carry regret, you'll interpret distance as punishment. If you carry unworthiness, you'll reject love before it has a chance to stay. Not because you want to suffer, but because suffering has become familiar. Because suffering makes sense in a world where you no longer trust peace to last. The more you live inside these patterns, the more convincing they become. Eventually, you stop trying to prove your past wrong. You just try to survive it. You stop dreaming. You stop risking. You stop growing. And you call it maturity. But shrinking yourself to avoid pain is not wisdom. It's fear dressed up like control. And fear always keeps you smaller than the truth. The truth is, you were never meant to live as a reaction to your worst day. You were meant to live as a response to your deepest truth. And that truth is not found in who hurt you, what failed, or what fell apart. It's found in the part of you that refused to disappear. The part that still reaches. The part that still believes you're more than what broke you. You do not have to become someone else to start over. You only have to stop pretending that what happened to you is all there is to know about you. You are not your breakdown. You are your rebuilding. You are not the ending that shattered. You are the beginning that refused to stay buried. But that version of you won't rise on its own. It rises when you stop defending your pain and start protecting your possibility. Reinvention is not a betrayal of who you were. It's an act of honor toward who you could still become. You don't leave the past because it meant nothing. You leave it because you've taken everything it had to teach you, and now you are ready to learn from something else. Your past was a chapter. It is not the whole book. You are still writing. You are still capable of sentences that don't begin in sorrow. The moment you stop confusing your pain with your identity, you will feel something shift. Not instantly, not loudly, but deeply. Like your soul finally recognizing its own voice again. And when that happens, even the silence starts to feel like hope. Most people don't stay stuck because they don't know what to do. They stay stuck because doing it feels like letting go of too much. The memory, the identity, the pain they've come to know, even if it hurts, is familiar. Even if it drains them, it gives them a sense of order. And when you've lived long enough in pain, peace doesn't always feel safe. It feels foreign. Like a room with too much space, like a future with too many unknowns, so they stay. Not because it's good, but because it makes sense. Moving on sounds beautiful in theory, but in practice, it requires death. The death of who you were in that moment. The death of the version of you who didn't know better. The death of the story you've been telling to make sense of what happened. And most people don't fear change. They fear what they have to bury to make room for it. Because letting go feels like betrayal. Betrayal of the pain that once protected you. Betrayal of the anger that once made you feel strong. Betrayal of the version of you that survived. But healing is not betrayal. It's gratitude in motion. It's saying thank you to the pain for what it taught you and goodbye to the place it kept you. You can honor the past without holding on to it. You can respect what happened without continuing to repeat it. But to do that, you have to be willing to live without the drama, without the noise, without the excuses. You have to be willing to face the silence of possibility. And that kind of silence is terrifying when all you've known is chaos. There's a reason why some people sabotage their own progress. Because a future without pain requires responsibility. If you're no longer broken, you can no longer hide. You have to show up whole. You have to show up honest. You have to risk being seen without the armor. And that level of exposure feels unsafe when your wounds have become your justification. So instead of moving forward, you create reasons to retreat. You say it's not the right time. You say you're still processing. But deep down, you're scared of what happens if this time you don't get to hide behind what hurt you. The truth is, moving on isn't a feeling. It's a discipline. It's a choice made in the middle of uncertainty. It's a daily decision to stop measuring your worth by what went wrong. To stop giving your past the right to name your identity. And no, it's not easy. But neither is staying stuck. Staying where the wound lives, where the fear speaks, where the pain gets louder with every memory replayed. That is not easier. That is just slower death. A numb existence dressed as safety, You don't move on because you're over it. You move on because you're done letting it run you. You move on because you've decided to stop making your past comfortable and start making your future possible. That doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means it no longer directs your steps. It means you feel the weight, but you walk anyway. Because your healing matters more than your comfort. Because your growth matters more than your narrative. Because your life still has time to bloom. Letting go is not about cutting off the past. It's about loosening its grip until you can breathe again, until you can think without spiraling, until you can dream without apologizing, until you can love without comparing. And when that moment comes, when you finally stop needing the pain to make you feel real, you'll discover something that was there all along: the strength to rebuild, the courage to rewrite, the permission to begin again. Reinvention is not a lightning bolt. It's not one perfect moment where everything changes. It's the quiet decision you make when no one's watching. It's the shift that happens when you finally stop asking for permission to be more than what you've been through. Becoming someone new is less about adding and more about removing. You strip away the voices that never belonged to you. You peel back the expectations that were never yours to carry. And underneath it all, you find the truth that was buried by survival. Most people think reinvention starts with doing something different, but it actually begins with thinking differently, because you will never build a new life with the same mindset that built your old pain. You cannot walk into a new season with the same beliefs that kept you in the last one. Reinvention demands that you confront your default reactions, your quiet fears, your subtle self-sabotage. It asks you to look at the patterns you've called personality and question whether they are actually pain in disguise. You are not reinventing because who you were was a mistake. You are reinventing because who you were no longer fits who you are becoming. That is not rejection. That is maturity. That is what it means to grow. You shed old skin not because it was bad, but because it finished its purpose. You outgrow what no longer carries your soul forward. And the danger isn't in letting go. The danger is in clinging to an expired version of yourself out of loyalty to the struggle it took to survive. Rebirth does not erase the past. It redeems it. It gives it a purpose that pain could never offer on its own. Every tear becomes a teacher. Every scar becomes a sentence in the story of how you came back to life. The mistakes, the silence, the breakdowns, they all become raw material for your reconstruction. You do not start over by becoming someone else. You start over by stepping into who you always were before the noise taught you to hide. But here is what most people miss. Reinvention is not about speed. It's about alignment. You don't have to rush. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to stop walking in circles around who you used to be. You take the first step forward, not when it feels safe, but when it feels honest. When you say, this is who I am now, not perfect, not polished, but present, here, becoming again. There will be days when the old voice comes back, when shame knocks louder than your progress, when regret tries to convince you that you haven't changed. And on those days, you don't need to be powerful. You just need to be consistent. You just need to show up again with the same quiet defiance that says, I will not return to what broke me. I will not perform pain to make others comfortable. I will not shrink to fit a story I've outgrown. The world may not notice your change at first. That's okay. The seed never looks like the tree. What matters is that you know that inside your heart, something is different. That your breath feels a little lighter. That your thoughts feel a little clearer. That your silence is no longer full of shame, but full of possibility. That is the real evidence. That is how you know the rebirth has already begun.